What is going on, guys? Today, I'm back at you with another restoration project. Today, I'll be working on these Air Jordan 1 Breds from the DMP pack. For this project, I'm going to be doing a sole swap and replacing the soles with a DS pair of soles with the same exact color blocking. Additionally, there's a little bit of wear and tear on the uppers, and because of that, I'm going to be doing a little bit of repainting on the uppers just to get these things looking 100%. The first thing that I have to do is take the soles off, so then that way I can remove all of the old factory glue from the uppers.
To begin my sole separation process, I'm going to pull out a razor blade, which I'll use to help to cut the threads that hold the uppers to the soles. It is possible to pull these threads out and reuse them in the future, but because of how old and dingy they are, I'll just be utilizing new threads when it comes to the stitching for the end of this project. Once I have all of my threads cut off, it was very easy to remove the uppers because of how old, brittle, and dry this original factory glue was. Once the uppers are separated, I'll use an X-Acto knife to help to skive off all the old factory glue. This is an incredibly important part of the preparation process because without removing the old factory glue, you're not going to get a nice, strong, long-lasting bond, and that will pretty much cause for a poor reglue that will fall apart more quickly. Once I've finished skiving the uppers, I'm going to remove the factory glue from the footbed of the uppers. For this part of the process, I'll break out a wool sanding bit for my Dremel, and I'll help to push all of that old glue to a common location on the footbed. Once that glue has dried up and solidified, I can literally just take my fingers and pull it right off. Then I'm going to touch up all the areas that I previously skived, utilizing a true sanding bit on my Dremel. This will ensure that all of the old factory glue is gone and that I have a nice rough surface, which will allow for a stronger reglue once I get my new soles on there. Finally, I'm going to touch up the uppers utilizing some acetone on Q-tips and cotton balls to ensure that I've removed all of the old factory glue and any sort of debris that I created during the skiving or the dremeling process. I make sure to be especially careful so that I'm not going to damage the uppers by getting acetone anywhere that I don't want it to be.
I finally found a donor for these Jordan 1 Bred DMPs with this pair of Jordan 1 Bred mids. In order to utilize the soles from these things, I'm gonna have to first take them off. I'm gonna begin my sole removal by actually taking out the insole and the laces first. This will allow me much better access to the footbed of the uppers later on in the process. When I do this, I'm also able to see where the sole thread has been attached, and using a weeding tool that you might use with a Cricut machine, I'll pull out the threading and continue to utilize my weeding tool along the way to separate the two threads that holds the sole to the uppers. Once I've got those threads out, it's time to pour a little bit of acetone in the footbed of these kicks. I pour a little bit of acetone and swish it around and let it sit for several minutes. During that time, I have some water boiling inside my steam gun, and after pouring out the excess acetone, I hit the edges where the uppers meet the soles with my steam gun and use some pressure from a bone folder to pry the uppers away from the soles. Once the soles are separated and completely dried off, I take a Dremel tool with a grinding bit to help to remove as much remaining factory debris and glue as I possibly can. After getting off as much glue and debris as I'm able to, I use some acetone with some cotton balls to help to remove any remaining factory glue and any sort of debris I created during my dremeling. My prep work on these Jordan 1 DMP Breds is finally complete. I've removed all of the old factory debris and glue, and now it's time to get the uppers bonded to the soles. To begin this process, I'll mark the center line at both the heel and the toe utilizing a heat erasable pen. Marking up the center is going to help me to align these appropriately so that everything matches up and I have nice clean edges at the end of this reglue. I'm then going to apply 2 light coats of Barge Super Stick cement approximately 15 minutes apart from one another. I like to do 2 coats because I find that this gives me the best overall coverage and actually creates for the strongest bond possible at the end of the day. Once I have my barge applied to both the soles and the uppers, I'm gonna let it cure for a couple of hours. Once I place the uppers on the soles, I'm going to reheat the Super Stick so then that way I reactivate it. Once I've reactivated the Super Stick, it's time to start to bond my surfaces together. Typically what I like to do is first bond the toe so I get a proper alignment up front, and then I bond the heel. I like to do the toe and the heel first because I find that that helps to align the medial and the lateral sides a little bit better, and that actually makes the rest of the reglue a lot easier. Once I finish bonding the lateral and the medial sides, I'm gonna put a little bit of heat internally so I can bond the footbed together as well. Once the bond is complete, I'm gonna allow it to cure for another 24 hours or so before I touch these shoes again. I got my soles bonded to my uppers with the glue, and now the last things that I gotta do in this project are clean up the uppers, do a couple of touch-up paint jobs on the uppers, and stitch the soles. Let's start off by getting these things clean.
To begin my cleaning process, I start by removing the laces so those can get a nice deep clean. Then I place some sneaker cleaner into a Tupperware container where I drop my laces, and using an all-purpose brush, I'll clean the uppers of the sneakers so I can reveal any blemishes that might need to be repainted. With these kicks deep cleaned, it's time to focus on the repaint of the uppers. I start by removing the factory finish with some acetone and cotton balls, and follow that up with some fine grit sandpaper to buff out any sort of blemishes or scratches. I'll then hit them with some flat black paint from Angelus, and once the paint has dried completely, I apply a top coat of some Liquid Kicks factory finisher to provide a scratch resistant seal. With the uppers repainted, it's time to finalize this project by stitching the uppers to the soles. Firstly, I'll pre-poke some holes to make my stitch work a little bit easier. Then, after anchoring my threads in place, I'll use my sewing awl to help to stitch the uppers to the soles and secure them together. Unfortunately, when doing this by hand, it's an incredibly long and tedious process, and you have to be especially careful as to not puncture your fingers while you're doing it. Once I have the soles stitched to the uppers, all I need to do is reinsert the insoles and get these things relaced up before I can call it a day on this project.
I am finally done with the restoration on these Air Jordan 1 DMP Breds. Let's take a closer look so you guys can see the finished product. Overall, for my first time ever doing any sort of work on a Jordan 1, I'm pretty excited with the way that these things came out. Unfortunately, the alignment on both shoes on the medial side does leave a little bit to be desired. I was unable to get that alignment 100% perfect, but being that it's on the medial side, it's going to be a lot more challenging to see when these things are on feet. The same can be said about the toes on both sides, and at the end of the day, I kind of wish that I had started my bonding process at the heel. The lateral sides of the shoe actually look pretty good. The repaint that I did on the toe cap also went relatively well, but I do think that I need some more practice to get everything as clean as possible for future projects. Overall, these Jordan 1 Breds are looking a lot better than when I first got them in, and now they're 100% wearable. I know that they didn't turn out as perfect as I had originally hoped that they would, but since I'm keeping them for a personal pair, it doesn't really much matter what the end result looks like as long as I'm happy with them. And at the end of the day, I got a ton of practice working with Jordan 1s that I can carry forward to any sort of future project. Thank you so much to everybody that's been following along on my restoration journey. It means the world to me. And I appreciate every single one of you that stuck around until the cold, bitter end of this video. You guys already know, I'm Sailboat, and I'm out of here.